Hello and welcome to Midday Discourse on Global Television. My name is Samuel Odi, and today is a beautiful Tuesday afternoon where we'll be looking at issues regarding to the dip that was faced by the oil sector. In the month of March, we had 1.6, and then in February, we had about 1.3 or 1.2 thereabout. And then today, we'll be looking at the challenges why we had all of those incidents happen, the decrease we found ourselves in the month of March. I'll have a guest who will be joining me live today in the studio, and we'll be looking at these topics and then how we can come out of it and the challenges that were faced to the essence why we had that dip in crude oil production, which is not in line with the budget or the plan for the federal government and our plan for the whole year. We'll be going on a quick break, and when we come back, Midday Discuss continues, and I'll be introducing my guest at that time. Please do stay with us. We'll be right back. Yes, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Midday Discourse on Global Television. My name is Samuel Odi. Before we went on a quick break, I said we'll be introducing my guest, who is live in the studio with me, Mrs. Faith Nwadiachi, a coordinator women in Extravagance and executive director for Center for Transparency and Advocacy. Yes, she's live with me in the studio. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us.
Good day, everyone.
Yes, thank you for joining us on Midday Discuss.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so before we go further, the global benchmark for crude oil witnessed a rise in price in the past 3 days, crossing $84 per barrel after trading for an average of $80 per barrel. Its price came after a time the Nigerian government announced a new crude oil production target of 2.5 million barrels per day, a development that would really grow the foreign exchange fortune of the country if met. The Nigerian oil output rose by 91,476 barrels per day to hit 1.4 million barrels per day in January 2024, when compared to the production figure of 1.3 in December 2023, according to the latest data from Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, an agency of the federal government. The figure from NUPRC showed that with the addition of coordinates, Nigeria's oil production rose to 1.6 barrels per day in January 2024, up from the 1.5 million we witnessed in December 2023. Nigeria's crude oil production witnessed the second consecutive monthly decline since the beginning of the year, as it dropped to 1.2 million barrels per day in the month of March. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries stated on Thursday, a few weeks ago. So, with all of this increase, we had increase in December, we had increase in January, had a decline in March. So, what can we say is the cause of this decrease?
Thank you so much. The experts in the industry, or let me say the regulators in the industry, have actually come out to tell us what the reason for the decline is. We have always talked about the issue of oil theft in this country. We have talked about pipeline vandalization and other issues that have bedeviled the sector itself. The target for Nigeria is actually 2.5 million barrels per day. Yes. From when we started exporting our first commercial quantity of crude in the late 1950s, we were exporting 5,000, at least we were pumping 5,000 barrels per day. We started from 5,000 barrels per day to when we got to the over 1.5 million barrels, and targeting 2.5 million barrels per day. But unfortunately, we have not been able, I think since 2012, we have not been able to meet up with our target for this. And everything has come down to the fact that even though we put a lot of effort in regulating and ensuring that we have infrastructure that work in the sector, there's a cabal. The word cabal was first mentioned by the late President Yaradua in the oil and gas sector, that said that the people who were stealing the crude from us. But unfortunately, again, in 2012, between 2012 and 2013, we're looking at 4% crude oil theft. But by 2022, 2023, we actually went up to 70% crude oil theft. And that's why you see a lot of the security around that. But unfortunately, again, in Nigeria, between January, when we had 1.6, in February, it came down again to 1.5, and now in March, we'll have 1.2. Unfortunately, showing that we are having that. And then the Minister of State for Petroleum, Crude Oil, actually came out to say, because some companies had some maintenance to do, and that was what led to the decline that we have. But the truth of the matter is that we continuously grapple with the issue of crude oil theft in the country. Okay,
but looking at the dip now, what does this decline means to Nigerian economy? Because if you look at it very well, every of Nigerian economy sector where it's dependent on the crude oil. So now, what does this dip now means to Nigerian economy?
Loss. It means that we will not be able to meet up our milestones. It means that we may not be able to do a lot of things that we have set out in our budget, because the budget is benchmarked on what we sell from our crude. So if we're not able to meet up with our target, which is about 2.5 billion barrels, and we are just doing about 1 million, we're not even up to 2 million, we're not even up to 1.9 million, it means that we are never ever able to get to what we have budgeted and to as revenue for our economy. But again, looking at the other side, and that's why the campaign and the agitation for diversification of the economy away from crude into oil, other sectors. For instance, agriculture in Nigeria. If we put all of that effort we're putting in the oil and gas sector into agriculture, we will not be looking at the shortfall in the revenues that we have to run our budget.
Okay. Looking at investment now, you know, there is some time that came out, NNPC came out to say there has been a decline in investment, those investing in crude. And mostly, I don't know, the dollar effect had anything to do with this decline that we face?
No. The thing is, every country that as a member of OPEC, you have a target for what you should pump in your country. So it's usually OPEC used to put a cap on if there's a glut in the market that you have too much crude and people are not buying, everybody is pumping their own crude. They will now cap it to say this country, this is what maximum you should produce. This other country, this is what maximum you should produce. We have not even been able to meet up with our the target of what we're supposed to to produce. So it is important that we look at all of this and say, Nigeria, what is the problem? What is the problem? Why is it that we are not meeting up with our target? Why is it that we are not about? Well, we have all come to agree, both the operators, both the regulators, and people, experts within the sector have come to agree that this issue is the issue of oil theft and no proper regulation and issues of impunity within that sector that is not properly addressed until we come to the round table and say, this is what we have spent so much money on security to guard against the issue of oil theft. For instance, NNPC came out, I think, within the last week of March and the first week of April, and said they had about 155 cases in 1 week. In 1 week. So we are having 155 cases, and yet we are spending more money on security. It means that something somewhere is not going on right. So
what can be done in this by PIA now in the rural communities now to be able to manage all of these challenges? That's the oil theft, the bunkering of our pipelines.
We need to engage community people more.
The host communities.
Yes, the host community. We need to engage them. The PIA already made provision for the establishment of the host community trust. So we need to sincerely follow through that process transparently. Be sure that community people have a role to play and ensure that when it comes to security, for instance, the PIA makes a provision that if there is a breakage of pipe within your community, the community will be held responsible. You don't do that. You don't put that kind of responsibility on the people that you want to engage. You rather need to incentivize the process so that communities themselves can bring out their resources, human and financial resources, to help you meet your target of ensuring that crude oil is no longer stolen in the country and pipelines are not vandalized within the country.
Okay. Like, is politics playing any kind of role in the oil sector?
Of course, the oil sector in Nigeria is a politics. You cannot remove the oil sector in Nigeria. And that's why you see the president, from President Olusegun Obasanjo, President Buhari, to now the very president now, all have been ministers of petroleum. Even though it is not what we desire it should be, it tells you that the politics of Nigeria is centered. In fact, the oil and gas is at the epicenter of politics in Nigeria.
Okay. Looking at that angle now, okay, you know, the president, current president, in the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and the CBN governor, they're actually working hard. So they're trying to work to see and find a way that Nigerian naira rebounds. So now with this decline that we faced just recently, and we are hoping not to have another decline again for the month of April, with this decline that we face now, and the fact that oil is centered around most of our budget, so how can them rebounding naira and then facing this decline? How does this work? How do we come out from all of this, this circle?
I think the first thing to do is to declare a state of emergency in that sector, especially in our production. Declare a state of emergency because, since 2012, this has been a matter that has been on the ground.
Yeah, because we've been facing, as a country, we've been facing like a decline, not just from 2012, I think from all the way from 2005. It has been a decline all through down to 2012.
Yeah, but majorly started, it became, in 2012, it became like 4%. That was when it became so significant that even the president at that time had to set up a committee of governors. They called it the Crude Oil Theft Committee. It was made up of governors, especially governors of the Niger Delta. Then Barrister Ledon Mite, who was the chairman of NATI at the time, was actually a member. of that committee. So it's when it got to 4% loss that we started taking some effort to do that. But last year, we got up to 70% loss. So the first thing to do for me, like I said earlier, is to declare a state of emergency, get the people, roll up their sleeves, sit down, let us come up with solutions that can help us do that. And you know that if we continue to have a decline, we're not able to meet with our budget target. It also means that we're not even able to meet with what we can say, this is what we are selling, this is what we are gaining, to improve our currency. Because crude oil is our gold, just like gold is to South Africa, and gold and oil is to the US. So the crude oil is our gold. We need to sit down and learn how to manage it properly so that we have reserves that we can use to show up the strength of our naira and then make it, strengthen it, just with the effort that the president and the CBN governor is making. We can complement all of that with what we have as our own natural resources.
Okay. Now, for someone to be holding a very particular office, do we have enough people that are very, very knowledgeable in the sector or in this oil and gas sector that are actually maintaining and doing, dotting the T's and crossing the T's and dotting the I's in terms of having an actual production?
Yeah, we can never say in Nigeria that we don't have capacity when it comes, even if it is intellectual capacity, we have it. It's just that, and moreover, outside the intellectual capacity, we have the capacity in policies. Look at the PIA, even though we have said there's some gaps in the PIA, but the PIA is a progressive kind of legislation that has helped to bring about some reforms within the oil and gas sector. So we have the PIA, we have other regulations, NUPRC have been coming out with regulations upon regulations on what should be done. What we really need to do is look at the implementation of those policies, bring the eggheads that we have within the sector, you know, dissect the policies that we have, and come up with a roadmap on how we can actually do this, and make a commitment to ensure that the implementation of that roadmap is done. And beyond even just implementing that the roadmap that we'll come up with, let us look at where there are lacunas, where there are gaps, and see if people deliberately, you know, try to sabotage this effort, and then ensure that there is no impunity in the implementation of this framework and all of these gaps we are trying to plug. If there is any kind of impunity, you put in sanctions. Really not looking at whose ox is God, but when you do that, I'm sure we'll be able to get back to the trajectory of success that we are known for in the country. Yeah,
you know, we have different kinds of production, right? Which is like marketing production and technical production. So in this slide now, which one is the Nigerian government or is the sector paying more attention to? Because if there is a certain one, if you're paying more attention to the marketing production, that means we need to have more than enough to be able to export out if you're paying more attention to the marketing. But if it's a technical production aspect that we're looking at, what light now can this be thrown at, and which angle now, or which of the production angles now, does the sector need to pay more attention to?
Without your technicals, you cannot get your marketing. Because when your technicals are right, this is where you look at the infrastructure, this is where you look at your metering system, this is where you look at your refineries, this is where you look at all of that. You need to put all of that in place so that you can get the outputs, and the output is actually the marketing aspect of it. For instance, if the government has made a commitment to repair the refineries, do you know that if we have the 4 refineries working optimally in the country, we'll be able to meet with our domestic crude consumption because it produces about 445,000 barrels per day that is supposed to meet what every Nigerian is using. Then we don't have to import. So that extra that you produce, you now export and make some gain for your country to improve your economy. So you really need to look at the technical aspect of it and also look at the other aspect of it. But without the technical being in place, ensuring that you have your infrastructure in place, your policies in place and all of that, and you have credible people, men and women who are manning these processes, we will not ever be able to get it wrong. So you cannot separate one from the other because one leads to the outcome of the other. So we need to be able to do that. And I'm sure it was on the basis of that the recent government said they were going to look at the refineries work in all of that. And I tell you, if the refineries come up, for instance, Dangote refinery, you can see what has happened, reduction in the price of diesel, the price of diesel. And then there's a new regulation that just came out now that say every oil producing company in the country must give Dangote first crude to be able to do that. So if you have a Dangote refinery that's producing 650,000 barrels and you have 4 refineries in the country that produce about 450,000 barrels, that will give you about over 1,000 barrels for domestic consumption, and you are comfortable with what you are sending out to bring in revenue into the country. But right now what we do is that rather than turning that 445,000 barrels per day into domestic consumption, we're exporting everything out and bringing in refined products. So,
okay, that means that's the angle now that we're looking at. That's why we're having to buy 660 naira per liter.
Yes, at the pump. At the pump
price. Yes. Okay, what can be done now for these refineries? Because now Dangote refineries have been promised to start running. Some reports came that it was supposed to start running in March. Now it has been shifted now, and all the other refinery in Port Harcourt, where you don't know an XY amount was set aside for technical repairs and all of that. Can you tell us how far, if progress has been made in revamping the refinery in Port Harcourt?
Well, we were told that the refinery will start working in December last year. and this is almost at the end of April this year, and the refinery is yet not working. And you find that over the years we've had problems with the refineries. If you remember, there was a time this word was a catchword in Nigeria, turnaround maintenance. They were doing turnaround maintenance in the refineries in Nigeria. It was never ever working. And then you had a time where they said they were going to privatize the refineries. Labour came out to say, no, you cannot privatize because everything to revamp that refinery is on ground. You know, but we still didn't see that. And that's where the conversation around the politics of it comes in. We need to have the political will to look at this sector that you can describe as the golden geese in Nigeria that lays the golden egg. This is what keeps us. And you know, because of the fact that, in fact, every Nigerian should be concerned about this dip. Right now, if you look at, when they look at the economies of Africa, Nigeria has gone to the 4th place. Nigeria has gone from the first place to the 4th place. So because of the dip, because of insecurity, and because of other economic issues that we're having within the country. So, and that's why I say they should declare a state of emergency within the sector, get the eggheads in place, get the policies in place, draw out a roadmap on how to implement this. I commend NUPRC for the regulations that have been bringing out. But let those regulations go beyond paper. Let us have actions. Let us see people, you know, working to ensure that these regulations we are bringing out are working for the benefit of people. Because at the end of the day, this is the only thing that we can say natural resources. Fine, Nigeria is blessed with so many natural resources. We have gold. People have said we have diamond. We have different types of solid minerals and agriculture. You can see the Nigeria is more like a food basket for Africa. So we have potentials that we need to begin to develop. So take the money, whatever gains we have made with crude oil and all of that, plow it into all of these other areas. People are also talking about energy transition. We have all of that. We have sun, we have water, we have gas, you know, whatever it is that we want to do. Nigeria is more like a hub of all of these energies and resources within the country. But we need to have people with the political will, the expertise, and all of the know-how on how to put all of this together and cook a wonderful jollof rice that every Nigerian can enjoy.
Yes, talking about jollof rice. Yes, so let's move on. Okay, what can be done to expand production in capacity? What can be done to expand the production capacity of Nigerian crude sector?
So what we need to do, you know, people have been given licenses for modular refineries. And those modular refineries are supposed to produce like 10,000 barrels per day. So are they working? What is stopping them from refining? What is stopping them? Can we look into that? Do we need to give more licenses? People are waiting on the line to get licenses to have modular refineries. What kind of incentives do we give to those people who are doing illegal refining, destroying the environment, stealing the crude? But I tell you, when it comes to oil theft in the country, it's not a game for little fries. It's not a game for the masses. Crude is stolen with, you know, using those big ships that are even higher than this you're building. And then people are saying we're not seeing those things happening. So we need to begin to look at those things. And when we're able to put a stop to crude oil theft in the country, we repair our infrastructure, we get the refineries and the people, the oil producing companies who are producing, ensure that they meet up with the contract that they have signed, ensure that they do the right things, ensure you punish people who have done wrong, and then I'm sure we'll get back on the right track. Okay.
Well, okay. Are there policies laid aside for these private, you know, companies that refine oil that are meant to refine 10,000 barrels per day? If they don't meet their targets, are there maybe policies? Are there sanctions that is in place for those people?
So if, like, for instance, those refineries are supposed to refine, they are not the one producing the crude. Yes. They're supposed to refine at least 10,000 barrels. So, but if they don't have the 10,000 barrels to produce, and I'm guessing that's the wisdom behind why NUPRC came out with a new regulation that say that you should consider Dangote, consider those modular refineries, sell to them, either they want to buy in dollars or they want to buy in naira. Let them, like, if you have 3 modular refineries that are are working. You already have sold out 30,000. That's on daily basis. You're already selling 30,000 barrels of crude. You're selling about, say, 200 or 300,000 barrels to Dangote refinery on a daily basis. It will be able to cushion the impact that we have. And now give encouragement to more people who want to set up modular refineries, to just set up those refineries. You give them the technical assistance and support them. Even if they need to have financing to do that, you give them the support, because at the end of the day, it will greatly drop the cost of pump price of PMS that will go out to buy, and cushion the impact of the removal of subsidy on Nigerians. For instance, if you are producing refined products within the country, then you cannot. They talk about removal of subsidy. We know, because it will definitely come down, and then you are now selling out to the people. But what stops a country like Nigeria, that has been producing oil since the late 1950s, to become a world exporter of refined product, not crude now, of refined product, just like you have in Russia?
Okay, you made mention of selling. So if you're selling now, we tend to more around the NNPC and oil sector, they deal basically on dollar. That's both selling domestically and exporting. Why don't we just pay more attention of selling in Naira, since maybe domestically, since Naira is our major currency here? Why don't we pay more attention in selling to Naira, so it will help revamp our economy that's going down?
And also strengthen our Naira. I'm on the same page with you, and I have argued in that line. Last week I was debating, and we had that kind of argument. And that's why NUPRC, I come back again to that regulation by NUPRC. They have said it's either you sell in Naira or in dollar. It depends on what you negotiate. If I have my company and there's this liberty to say you can use either Naira or dollar, you can therefore go back either to the buyer to say, but right now what we have, the buyer does not, they say the buyer is always on top, is king, the customer is king. But when it comes to the oil and gas sector in Nigeria, it is the seller that is king. It is not the buyer that is king. Because right now the buyer doesn't even have access to the crude, and the crude, there's policy that the seller can take it out where he or she can make more gain. Money. So now that you have that policy that say consider these people first before you take away whatever you want to have. So if I am buyer A or buyer B, the federal government can decide to give me an incentive to say, negotiate to buy in Naira rather than buying in dollar, because the more you keep Naira in circulation, the more you keep Naira, use Naira for such international transactions, you strengthen the Naira. So you need to give an incentive to the people who want to give out their Naira in such a way that they will have return on investment, and they will be happy to continue that investment to strengthen your Naira.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. We'll be going on a quick break, and then when we come back, Midday Discourse continues. Please do stay with us.
I'd like to have my...
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Midday Discourse on Global Television, and we've been conversing on the dip that was faced by the oil sector in the month of March, and we're looking at mediums on how we can, come out from that and not face another dip. I actually have a guest with me here in the studio, Madam Faith. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Yes. So, how can we focus? How can oil bunkering and oil theft be brought down to its minimal in Nigeria? Because this has been something that has been ongoing for a very, very long time.
Okay, so let's get it right. There's legal oil bunkering and there's illegal oil bunkering. So oil bunkering is a legal thing that is done. That process of, taking crude and putting that process is called bunkering. Yes. So when you generalize it and say, how do we stop bunkering, means how do we need to stop the legal one? So the aspect of it that we are looking at is the illegal bunkering. That is those who go to steal the crude and then export it out of the country. It boils down to issues around patriotism. It boils down to issues around taking care of impunity. We are spending so much money on security, yet we are not seeing the benefits that we need to get out of the security. In fact, it has become so lucrative to be posted as a security agent to any of those oil-producing areas. So we need to also interrogate that, and then put in place systems to prosecute those people who have been found, whether high or mighty or low and below, all those people. But first of all, take care of the high and mighty people, the people who are doing this. In the earlier on this program, I talked about the late President Yar'Adua, who mentioned the issue of cabal within the system. So is it possible to begin to identify those cabal? I don't want to believe that with the caliber of security agencies that we have, DSS, the police, Nigerian intelligence service that we have in the country, they're not able to identify those people. They should identify those people and let us get a few scapegoats and see where that takes us.
Okay. So now, what major role can the security agencies play in countering all of this?
First and foremost, identify the people and prosecute them. Let them go through prosecution. Whatever the law says should be done, the prescription that the law has given on how to deal with those kind of things, it should be done. Secondly, we should engage communities. We shouldn't intimidate communities. We should engage communities, because all of these things we're talking about revenue for the country, but there are also negative impacts that come out with the exploitation and exploration of crude that we have. And these people who live within those communities are the ones who are suffering the negative impacts. We should engage them in such a way to cushion the impact, the negative impact of the exploitation of our crude or our natural resources on this food, instead of intimidating them. Then we should also look at best practices. What is it that is happening in other places? Exactly the same time in the late 1950s, when Nigeria started exporting crude commercially, Norway also started. But look at where Norway is and look at where we are.
Venezuela as well.
Yes. No, well, Venezuela's case is a different case because they have gone down, they have gone south. So those days when Venezuela was still, we used to mention Venezuela, but now Venezuela has gone south. I remember when Ghana was, they discovered oil and they were going to do that. Each time you go for a meeting and everybody is saying, oh, we're going to Nigeria to learn what they didn't do right. We're not asking Nigeria to come and give us examples of, we're going to Nigeria used to be the baby, the crybaby. Every bad case was about Nigeria. So we need to get the security agents, because really our security personnel in this country, when they go to other countries, they work with, they come out with flying colors, good recommendations and all of that. But can they bring that home? And let's see what we can do to revamp our natural resources, especially our crude oil sector.
Okay, in this light now, like our security agencies, most of them, they travel for trainings and other peacekeeping missions, and then they come back with flying colors. Are we saying that the problem now we have now is domestic?
It's quite domestic. It's because why I say it's domestic is the fact that some of these international oil companies who come to work in Nigeria are, you could say they're agents of their big countries. The kind of things they do in your country, they don't do in their country, because if they do it in their country, they will be prosecuted. Look at the cases of bribery we have had. For instance, the Halliburton case in Nigeria, when President Olusegun Obasanjo, Atiku Abubakar were in office. The American government sued the Halliburton and fined them, I think about $500 and something thousand at that time. But nobody was prosecuted in Nigeria. So if you have that kind of a case, you would have somebody from Halliburton come into Nigeria and hide off, and nothing happens to the person. We also had the issue with Siemens, the communication sector, representing the German government and all of the things that happened. So unless the laws we have are very adequate, even though you can't say they are very strong, but if we implement those little laws and hold people accountable for where they have gone wrong, I'm sure incrementally we'll begin to make progress.
Okay, one major role, like you made mention, you said most of these ships that are used to, stealing, taking away our oils are stored as this building.
Yeah.
So what major role does the host communities play in that light? Is it that host communities are basically the the first security before even the security agencies. So now, is there something that those private companies are not doing right to the host communities? That's why they just tend to keep quiet when theft of crude is being taking place.
It's natural. If I have a well in my compound and it is established that it's my compound, and within the vicinity or the area or the neighborhood, it is only that well that you can get potable water, and everybody comes to take water out of that potable water, and I don't have access to the potable water, what would you think I'll do?
Food for thought. Okay. Yes, so what would you do if you have water in your house and you're not being allowed to use it? So now, what can be done now? Now, who are we to hold responsible? That means, do we need to hold those private sectors responsible, those private oil companies responsible for all of this decline that we are facing? Do they have a major role to play in it?
Who do we hold responsible? The federal government. Because the Constitution gives them the power to hold in trust for us all the natural resources that's on top of the ground, below the ground, you understand? So if you have been given that responsibility and there's something wrong within that sector, I should hold you responsible. Because those companies don't sign contracts with me. They sign with you because the Constitution has given you the power to manage these resources on my behalf. So if you have signed those contracts and these companies are not doing the right thing, on my behalf, you should prosecute them. On my behalf, you should go back to look at those contracts that you signed. Did I do the right thing? What can happen in this company's home country? If he or she commits this kind of crime, what happens? So if I don't have that captured in my contract, I call for a review. Because in every contract, there's always that clause for a review. So if I feel that I have signed a contract that is detrimental to the people who have given me this in trust, it is my responsibility to correct it, and not the third person that you have signed that contract with.
So how do we go about this now? Because the security agencies now have a major role to play, the host communities have a major role to play. So now it boils down to implementation, right? So these bodies now that have this, policies written, do we need to create another body that will be overseeing them to make sure they implement those policies that are on ground already?
No, we don't need to create another body. In fact, we should actually look for a way to merge and combine some of those agencies. What happens, one best practice that happens in other countries and even African countries is that before you give an oil contract or a concession, let's say if it's solid minerals, a concession contract to the person, it is the parliament that debates it. So you don't have the minister or the president at any time signing off, one person sitting down and saying, I'm giving you license. That license is debated in parliament. The reason why it's debated in parliament is because of the assumption that members of parliament are the representatives of the people, even though we know that some members of parliament never consult their constituency, even though we know that. But the responsibility for that to happen is with the people. The people who voted or selected whoever into that office have the responsibility to ensure that this person comes to give us account. So if the person is not giving you account, it is the responsibility of the people. It's not even government responsibility. It's not even an ex responsibility. It is the people's responsibility. So if these people are representatives of the people and there's a license to be given within my area, let's say my community, I am from the Niger Delta, I'm from Delta State. So there's a license to be given. My representative should be at that meeting. The committee in the house should be able to look at that license, the conditions, what are the conditions, how does it affect the people, have you done a proper environmental impact assessment, before they will now recommend that this license should be given to such a person. But these licenses don't go to parliament. So usually it is a minister, and that's why every president sits as a minister of petroleum in the country.
Okay, so now, you're saying there from the Niger Delta, just a few months back, a whole lot of killings happened in Okoma community, which it's arguably said that it's an oil-producing, community. So how has this now been affected? Does this killing have any link to this dip that we faced?
So it will have, because in that community you have oil wells. They're supposed to produce their own quota, and they're not producing. There's no production can happen there anymore until that conflict is completely set aside. Even the communities around there. So the oil producer, government, the citizens themselves, nobody's at peace. It's like somebody who have murdered sleep, and so nobody sleeps until you're able to take care of everybody. They can also contribute. Insecurity can also contribute to a lot of those, and that's why I think government says they're spending money on security, but we need to be able to sit down at a point in time and say, let's evaluate. We have spent X amount of money to provide security. We are not having security. Does it mean that security is not working?
Now,
Let us re-strategize.
Is it the securities now, or is the host community itself? Where do, like now, you know, if you don't cut off the head of the snake, it will still keep coming at you. So now we need to know, is the problem now in the host, with the host community, that's like the citizens of those community, or it has to deal with, you know, those that they voted into office?
So it is a hydra-headed kind of problem that you have. Number one, most of those host communities just wake up to see that companies are working in their environment. They were never in the conversation to say, this company, you are coming into our environment, what is it? What is in it for us? We're having this environmental issue. How are you going to do remediation for our environment? What are you going to do? Let me give you a typical scenario of what you see. You are in this studio. Let's say this studio, divide it into two. This is one part for host communities, and this is one part for the company that is coming to exploit oil within your community. This part will have potable water, electricity 24/7 and all of that. And this community where you have come to does not have electricity, does not have water, does not even have as little as public toilets where you can do issues of hygiene and all of that. And you wake up every morning from this community, you have lived in this community all your life, and the first sight that faces you is that these people who have come into your community have all of this life that they're living, good schools, good road, within the community within community. So, and then people definitely will be agitated. So we need to have a way, and that's why I'm really happy with the provision in the PIA that says host community trust and all of that, how to go about that, get community people involved in all of. So let's practice it. Let's see how it comes to, and begin to look at when this was happening and this is happening. Has there been any improvement? If there's no improvement, we'll look at where the loopholes are and suggest something better that can help us move forward. How is it working in other climes? What is happening in other climes? For instance, when everybody makes the US as a case study. Okay, so we are about 36 states in the country. We have all of that. Every place you have whatever you have. In the US, you have the right to exploit the resources that you have. What the federal government will do is come and give you technical assistance. And you pay tax to the federal government. So you can go to a state like Texas, you go to a place like New Jersey, they're paying different taxes in Texas, they're paying different taxes in New Jersey, because you have control of your resources. What you are doing is that you are paying a general tax. But what we have in Nigeria is that every month you have commissioners of finance come to the federal government to look for money and say, give us money. It should change, so that you now have these commissioners for finance, calculating what they are paying to federal government coffers, instead of federal government now paying money to the state government. And so at the end of the day, it's about how much revenue are we getting from state government. Nobody's looking at internal revenue. Nobody's looking at also supporting agriculture within their state to make sure that it adds, to the revenue. And what happens is that when you don't get what you're expecting, you go and take a loan that you cannot pay within the confines of the 4 or 8 years you're going to spend in office.
So what can PIA now do now for these host communities, and what policies need to be put in place to, scrutinize these private oil production companies to be able to hold on to their own end of the bargain? Because hopefully, I'm hoping there are laid down rules of what those private companies need to do for the host communities. How do the PIA now come into place and make sure all of these things now are being done, not for you, living on the streets, having light, and then the other person, having everything he or she needs? So what can PIA do now?
Okay, so two fundamental things. Allow the host community trust run and let the people have ownership of it,
Okay.
instead of allowing the company to sit as overseer
Yes.
over the implementation of that. Then Nigeria is a signatory to Open Government Partnership and also implementing the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative. Incidentally, I was on the board of the International EITI for 6 years, representing Anglophone, that's English-speaking African countries.
Yes.
And then, so the EITI now makes it compulsory for countries to let citizens see the contract they have signed with these companies.
Yes.
So one thing to do is, if you have signed contract with a company that's working within a host community, let the host community see that contract, know what is in the contract, so that even before you sign, you can go and negotiate with the community and say, how do we do this? That's one way to incentivize community participation. So you don't go and sign contract that you have given over community to people and they don't know that.
Yes.
Then the other thing is about beneficial ownership. Sometimes we may be wrong. We were saying, oh, this contract is owned by one American or one South African or one, not knowing that there's a big fish in Nigeria that is there. So the issue of beneficial ownership, who is actually behind this company that is working in this place? I'm telling you, if we know those two things, the terms of a contract, who the beneficial owners are, and you let community people know, there'll be less agitation.
Okay.
And there'll be more progress.
Okay. Thank you so much, Madam Faith Mwadiachi, the Coordinator for Women in Extravagance and Ex-Director, Center for Transparency Advocacy, former member of EIT International Board and NET Board member. Thank you so much for joining us today. So what's your final take on this, on how we can come out from this deep and just keep progressing as a country?
So my take and to call out to all Nigerians is that the oil and gas sector concerns every Nigerian, born and unborn, because our economies, our projections are made on what we get from that industry. Yes. Everybody should be interested in that. If you're happy that they're stealing our crude and a few people are getting enriched, what you're doing is that you're depriving government of that resources to bring about the kind of development that we need, both for this generation and the future generation.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma.
And
that's how much we can take today on Midday Discourse. And it's a cry for every Nigerian. Get yourself involved with what's happening here in Nigeria, so the government will have every resources required to be able to give us that kind of development and growth that we desire. That's on today's edition on Midday Discourse. I'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. My name is Samuel Odi. Good afternoon. Have a fabulous day ahead.